Welcome to Chris Parkin Shooting Sports. A bit of a Q&A, a response to a question tonight. This is the Beretta BRX1, and when I did the full review on it I was a little bit cautious over some of the detail I put in the main video. The main videos take a long time to make and I don't like to risk getting them demonetized. Sometimes too much detail gets them demonetized. But anyway, what I wanted to do is try and show you the differences between how this straight pull action works and the Blaser, which people ask about. Now there is a video somewhere on my YouTube channel, I will find it, it's quite an old one, shows you the bolt system on a Blaser, and they are totally different. Other than the fact they move in a straight line, there's pretty much no similarities at all. But here is how the Beretta one works. So essentially this is the bolt carrier, that's the bolt handle, and then you've got the bolt head actually in here with the 8 lugs on it. You can possibly see on screen there 8 lugs there. Now what we're going to try and demonstrate is the fact that this goes into the barrel and then it rotates on the carrier. Now I'll have to show you this in different ways because it's very hard to actually see in one go. So the first thing I'll do is I'll take the bolt out, see if I can show you on the bolt what works. I'll have to just keep referring to the ceiling camera a little bit. Now if you look at this, this is a little bit similar to how an AR-15 works, to be honest. Let me just move that as well. Bit of a spontaneous one, this one. So that is the bolt head, 8 lugs. You've got the extractor claw and the ejector pin there. Now if you look, that bolt can actually rotate slightly and cams on that little helical sort of ramp there. So what that means is the bolt will rotate at the points where the actual bolt carrier is moving backwards and forwards. Now I'll show you this in the gun, but in the meantime I'll show you the fact that you can swap this rifle left and right handed. You can take the bolt handle out and it'll swap to the other side, but essentially the way you go about doing it, if you push that down, the bolt head will actually come completely out of the bolt. And if you look at that there, and they separate in half like that because it's totally symmetrical. So if you want to swap this from a right-handed rifle which ejects to the right, because the extractor claw's there and the ejector pin's there, so that would eject to the right. So if you were swapping it to a left-handed rifle, you pull that out, turn that over, you reassemble it obviously with the bolt handle on the opposite side. So now it's got the extractor claw there, the ejector pin here, and it will flick the case out to the left. But let's just go back to how it was, just for simplicity's sake. Now it is a little bit tricky doing this, so please forgive any fumbling because it is awkward. This is designed obviously to be on the carrier, but essentially what happens is that that bolt goes in to the back of the barrel in alignment like that, and as the bolt goes home it flicks left anti-clockwise, and that brings all the lugs into alignment with the abutment and stops the bolt opening. And then of course when you pull that bolt back, this diagonal track here causes the bolt to flick, so it unlocks and it comes back out. So in theory I can do that by hand and it does it like that. I'm afraid it's very difficult to see this on camera now, so I can't take the scope rail off this, which we're going to discuss a little bit more in a second. But I have another possibility of how I could make this look visible. So to put this back together, that goes back in there. I push that pin down and this will slot, always easier to do not on camera, back into there. So that is now the bolt back assembled, and you can see how that bolt springs there, and that is how it locks. So if I show you it in the gun now, we're going to try a slightly different method. To show you the bolt rotating, I'm going to put the gun on its side and I'm going to draw a line on here. Now I degreased this bolt, so hopefully that Sharpie marker will remain on there. So you can see all these lugs and they're all going to twist into place, but there's a mark there. Now in theory this will work, but that's in theory. Let's have a little look. I'm going to reassemble this, pop that back in there. Right, so the gun is back in position. Now I'm just going to bring the ceiling camera down and see if we can get in on that. So hopefully you can see that black mark on the bolt shaft there. Now there's very, very, very little to see here, but as I slide that forward, the lugs are sliding in to the back of the abutments now. Oops, that actually just flicked forward on its own. So as I go forwards there, you can possibly see the bolt will be almost closed, and it's just started to rotate now. The black mark has just started rotating. Can you see it? Just going backwards and forwards in that last sort of 8 or 9 millimeters of bolt travel. It's very, very difficult to see. But essentially that's how it works. So there, the lugs are in line, goes forward, the carrier goes forward, and just there, the bolt starts to rotate anti-clockwise, locks into the chamber. So now it can withstand the firing pressure of the rifle. Now conversely to that, those 7 or 8 millimeters are the amount of kind of run up you've got. Let's just bring this back out a second. Those 7 or 8 millimeters backward, when you're, you know, emptying the rifle, that is basically your primary extraction area, because you want to develop some speed in those 7 or 8 millimeters, so that when that bolt hits the cam and flicks it anti-clockwise, or flicks it clockwise to open it, you've got a little bit of speed and a bit of momentum built up. Because if you were pulling that immediately against that locked chamber, it would be a lot of effort. Now this is different really on a straight pull manual rifle, because if you imagine this is in an AR-15, the instant the rifle fires, this is obviously in a semi-automatic or fully automatic AR-15 as it was designed to be with the gas piston in it, the instant that rifle fires, it develops pressure. So there's not really any time for the case to remain long in the chamber as it's hot and gets sticky. And that's where straight pull rifles, which have been converted AR-15s, you know, it's good to have a really good bolt handle on it so you can get it and, you know, really open it up quickly. And this is pretty similar in those respects. Now one of the big differences from the Blaser is, on a Blaser this handle here actually rotates. There's no camming action like that, or there's no bolt lugs. The bolt lugs are on a collet and they actually expand radially like this to go into the actual abutments within the hammer forged barrel. Now what happens on a Blaser is when that handle rotates, it pulls the cam out, allows the collet, the collet lugs basically to contract again, and it allows it to come out of the barrel. But there's also, effectively, if we sort of compare it with this, there's a small metal pin on the front of the bolt carrier which pushes against the back of the barrel, and that gives you a lot of primary extraction power. And it also means, you know, you can open or close a Blaser slowly and it works with full mechanical advantage. This one does need a little bit of speed to develop that sort of primary extraction force. Now I hope I've sort of explained that in a fairly beneficial way to you. It is quite tricky to see because you can't take the scope rail off this barrel easily. One of the other things I wanted to tell you about this scope rail is the fact that it's mounted to the barrel and it's actually got quite a good three-dimensional profile on the back of it, which allows it to, you know, maintain a lot of stiffness, and it runs over the top of the bolt. Now those aren't actually bearing surfaces, but they are shaped to fit one within the other, just to make sure you've got good clearance on everything. And that, some people say, you know, is that going to be stiff enough? Is that going to be strong enough? But to be fair, it's plenty stiff, it's plenty strong. You're not going to lose zero on that. And I do love these orange magazines. I think that is a brilliant idea, to be honest. I wish all rifles had orange magazines so you could see them. So I hope that's a little bit more detail. This scope, actually, I would have loved to have done a full review on this scope, but unfortunately GMK need the rifle back quickly, because you lot are probably all going to the game fair next week and you'll all want to see them on the GMK stand. The 6.5 Creedmoor is fairly new. I think there's been a lot of 308s, 3006s around so far, and the Creedmoor is obviously going to be very popular to see. So had I had the rifle for longer, I would like to have shown you this Burris Veracity PH scope, but I haven't got full time to do it. But I have done a little bit of video of it. You'll have seen actually when this rifle was in use. Now what I can't actually do, you'll have seen when I did the review video on the rifle, I had a trigger cam on the scope. Now the trigger cam has got a sort of 9:3 aspect ratio on its actual sensor. So unfortunately the trigger cam doesn't record what you can see in the top of the scope. I have done a photograph of what's in the top of the scope, so you'll be able to kind of put those two things together and imagine what I'm telling you now from those two images. Essentially what this scope does, it doesn't have actual clicks on the elevation turret. What you do with it, it's conventional in every other respect. You know, it's got zoom from, I think this one is, what is this one? This one is a 5, is it 5 to 20? It's a 4 to 20, so it's a 5 times vector tube, fast focus eyepiece. It looks like a 50mm front end, 30mm tube. You've got left side, that looks like an illumination dial, but that's not. That's actually the setup for the internal display, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But you got, you know, adjustable parallax, windage on the side, elevation on top, fairly conventional. The difference is that there are no clicks on this elevation dial. The reason there are no clicks is because once you've zeroed the scope normally, and you release the little circumferential screws and the zero stop, set it up to mark 0, so you're all the way back there at, you know, marked 0 here. I think you probably see that on there, and you've got a 0 stop on it as well. Essentially what you then do is you use this left side dial, which initiates the Bluetooth on the display inside and turns it on, and you can pair that with the app from Burris on your phone or tablet or whatever, and you set up a ballistic profile of your specific projectile, muzzle velocity, scope height, all the, you know, usual factors, ballistic coefficient, etc, etc. You set all those up, resend it back to the scope, which then stores it. It doesn't matter if the scope's on or off, it stores this for you, and you can keep multiple profiles in the app if you've got several rifles with these sort of similar scopes, or you swap back and forth, or different types of ammunition. But essentially then what happens, and this is where you will see with the photograph, because as I said, I couldn't unfortunately record it with a trigger cam because it chops off on the aspect ratio. But instead of, you know, looking at your notes or your data or whatever and saying I need to add, you know, 2 minutes of angle or 3 minutes of angle or for XYZ shot at that ever range, what you do is you ping it with your rangefinders. You know what the range is, it might be, I don't know, 348 meters, and essentially all you do is you turn this dial on top just like you would on a normal elevation turret, but instead of it clicking, the little LED display inside sort of gives out the distance reading. You can set it to give you distance in meters or yards, or you can actually use it in minutes of angle if you want. Makes sense to me to have it actually read out in the distance unit that your binocular rangefinders or whatever are going to produce for you. But yeah, essentially you just dial that up until it's at the range to your target, bang, off you go. I used it out to about 400 meters. We were shooting some 4-pint milk cartons, which you'll see in the video, and to be fair, it worked really well actually. It's like any app system, you need to get used to things, you need to learn to set them up. But the Burris scope itself, this is about, I think it's just less than £1,000 this. 30mm tube, it looks very conventional, which means you've also got, you know, easy scope mounting, you've got nice tactile, easily perceived, easily gripped dials and controls on it. So essentially, if you didn't know what this was, it would be just any old normal scope. You've got no reticles or additional lens packages inside that are going to cut light transmission, so you get a nice bright clear picture. The only thing that you wouldn't, you know, think is, why doesn't that click? Have I got the zero, you know, screws loose or something like that? But essentially, yeah, that's how it works. You just dial the range that your rangefinder tells you once you set it up with the ballistic app. And, you know, like any other ballistic solution, you might need to just true it up a little bit, tweak it slightly, make sure your muzzle velocity is right and BC is right and things like that. But yeah, it's really, really good. And as a hunting scope, I think that's got quite a good place in the market. And I also don't think it's expensive at all, because it is quite a deluxe scope in its own right. So there we go. You know, you can enter windage factors, you've got elevation and, you know, inclination up and downhill, things like that. So work with the scope. It's one thing, I would really love to have had that for a lot more time. I would probably have put it on a 2.2 rimfire purely so I can just exercise it more. When I say exercise it, I mean shoot it at more distances with more elevation. Because a rimfire's got a more sort of curved trajectory, you're going to be doing a lot more dialing, which effectively exercises the scope a lot more, gives you much better perception of how accurate you can get it, how accurate you make it. On a 6.5 Creedmoor, on a hunting rifle, you're not really going to test it that hard. So for my ability to write an article for you guys, yes, I'm going to put it on a 2.2 rimfire when I get the chance, because that's going to be really where I enjoy that. Right, well, I hope you've liked that little impromptu Q&A video. I do quite enjoy doing them, so please, if you want questions answering in video format, number one, make them interesting. Number two, please don't just watch 3 seconds of a video and say, oh, blah 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 blah, to which I will reply, or maybe if not reply, watch the video. The reason I make one video is so that, you know, 20,000 people can see that one video instead of me getting 20,000 questions and replying 20,000 times. I wish it was that popular, but it's not quite that popular, but you get the idea. So yeah, put some questions on this video's comments. Tell me what you want to know, other than switching my phone onto silent. And we will do these Q&A things again. I think I've told you before, trying to do them live is all sorts of problems with technical issues, with broadband signal and things like that. So I'm just not going to do that. But I am going to do these because I like doing these and I get to interact with you guys a lot more. So yes, put the questions, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, click the notification bell, and the comments need to be questions I can do in maybe next week, or I'd like to do them once a week, to be honest, but I think once a fortnight is a better target to aim for. So right, thank you for watching, shoot safely, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.